We have to continue talking about the lies a little bit, because we talked about the physical lie of assessing the ball, how it's sitting in the turf, what kind of turf, the grass type, all that stuff. I did fail to mention elevation. Not just a U2 song, okay? Elevation. What is elevation? Elevation means we're either below the green or above the green. That means we're heading downhill or we're heading uphill. These are very, very key, and I think a lot of people get tripped up here. Not only with the lie of the ball, now we also have to think about other factors such as elevation. The best way to overcome this as an amateur is to get yourself a little rangefinder. Going to be a beautiful little thing for you. It's going to shoot the flag, right? So you're going to stand here and it's going to shoot the flag up here. And what it will do, it will show you two distances. It's going to show you a slope distance. Normally there's a little button on the side you can switch slope on and off. It's going to tell you 100, and then underneath that it's going to say 115 and how many degrees up it's playing. You want to remember that feeling, that memory. Let's be conscious, let's be mindful golfers, so that we're really taking in the information and becoming the all-knowing golfers. The best way for this is the rangefinder, just similarly that you can do it from above the green. You'll stand up here, you'll put it to your eye, shoot to the top of the flag. It's going to give you 100 yards, going to tell you it's playing like 85 minus 6%. It's going to tell you that information. This is the best way to overcome it initially on the golf course. Where if you play tournaments or if you play competitions where there's no slopes allowed, remember it. But this is the best way to learn with a tool and then digest it for when you can't use that tool. Very important. Now, how do we counter that, okay? If you're heading up, it's interrupting your ball flight. Do you see that? That's supposed to be your normal ball flight on a flat lie. But you can see the difference, how much distance it's cut out here. On that elevation, because it's playing from 100, it's playing 115, you want to hit your 115 club. That means it's going to interrupt your 115 club at the 100-yard point of its apex or of its flight, where a ball flight can be like that. It'll interrupt it there, and it's not steep enough on the descent, which means that it may bounce on a bit more. Instead of when it has the full flight, it might just stop short because it has that descent angle. It's cutting the descent angle. And the further back you go, so if you're hitting a 7 or 8 iron or 6 iron in, it's going to bound on more because there's no descent angle. It's cutting through, it's cutting your ball flight off halfway or 3/4 way through its flight. Let's say a beautiful 6 iron, maybe it's going to cut your 6 iron off there. Now you can see that that angle it's coming in there is very different to the angle it's coming in there. So that means it's going to bound on a little bit more. So if your 6 iron normally stops boop, 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 3 yards after the pitch mark, when you're hitting it here, because of what you've calculated with your elevation change, you're going to find it's going to roll on more. Now obviously the opposite is true for the downhill. Let's say this is actually a 185 yard shot playing 170. Your general shot shape on a flat lie with a longer shot is like that. But remember, we're going past the flat lie. We're going now down there, and it can actually start coming in straight down because of more angle of descent. So the opposite is true. It's just going to basically stop where it lands. Boop, 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 like that. Uphill, probably not going to stop as quick. It's cutting your ball flight off short here. Downhill, it's going beyond parallel, which it may give you a little bit more distance, but not by much, not by much. This calculation here is going to be pretty accurate. That's why you need to know your carry distances for your clubs so that you can hit the correct club on a downhill, hit the correct club on an upslope elevation. I want to address something very quickly before we continue to wind, because wind is another factor affecting your shot. I want you to stop asking others what they've done on the hole, what club they hit, how far they had in, and what club they hit. It's irrelevant to you. That's why when you ask people for lines on the greens, unless that person intimately knows your pace, your style of putting, do you like to ram it, do you like to die it in, they can't tell you the break. They can only tell you a break according to their putting style. Asking others about their shots from the fairway, from the rough, whatever, is potentially even worse than that, because they will hit different shots to you. They will assess the lie differently to you, hit different lofted clubs that are strong loft versus your weaker loft, or you have strong loft, they have weak loft. so their 8 iron goes further than yours, and you think, oh man, I'd be hitting a 7 or 6 from there. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't help you. How does it help you? So let's not compare with others when it comes to this stuff, unless your game is like super similar, or they can give you some advice. You could say, how did you deal with that lie? That's an amazing shot. Can you show me that? But in terms of comparing to others on your approach game, distance-wise versus the club they'd hit, etc., it doesn't help you. It's a negative on your game. So let's avoid that. Wind can affect your golf ball a lot. A lot. You know, you're probably playing it at the coast, or you're in a windy place. Right to left wind is going to pull the ball to the left. Left to right wind is going to push the ball to the right. Into you off the right, or into you off the left, or even trickier, because it's going to slow the ball down and push you further toward where the wind is blowing. These are our favorite. These are downwind, and directly into the face are the least favorite. But how do we deal with these in a very simple way, without getting too professional about it? Because you'll see people who will tell you have to hit a fade to hold it up into the wind, or you hit a draw to hold it up into the wind. If you don't have these shots on command, what you end up doing is you double cross yourself, and you actually hit a slice, and the wind takes it forever. If you don't have these shots, you make stressful shots. If you don't have these shots, you're trying to do something you've never practiced. You're trying to do something you can't do. And that always leads to the inevitable downfall. And if you do hit a fade, one of the things you can do is, if the wind's hard off the right, and you know your shot is a fade, you know you can hold it up into the wind. You know it because it's your shot shape. But if you have to start manufacturing shots that you don't have, that's when you start losing the ball to the wind. My solution generally, if I'm not having a great time in the wind especially, is I don't want to get too much with the punchy shots. I don't want to get too much with the, technical side of like trying to do stuff with the wind, because in the end you screw it up. And then at the end of the hole you go, well, you know what? If I had just hit a normal shot into the wind instead of trying to knock it down, I would have been in a better position. Because what happens is you try to hit some special shot, you hit this big looping slice, and when the wind's into you, it just pulls that slice that the ball actually starts going backwards, further right into the rough, when all you had to do was just hit your standard shot. And you would have been fine. Yeah, you would have lost 20, 30, 40 yards on it, but you would have been fine instead of being in the trees. So that's my theory with wind. If you're not a proficient wind player yet, it's fine. Do this kind of thing where you just hit your normal shot and then start gauging what happens. When you want to start getting fancy, you really want to go practice those shots in practice rounds. Okay, I can hit a punch shot, I can hit a wind shot, I can hit one that spins less. But generally, in the wind especially, just hit less loft. Don't hit the ball harder. Because as soon as you hit the ball harder, especially into the wind, okay, we're talking into the wind, downwind you can do whatever the hell you want. Just make sure the ball is not going to roll out into some hazard. You can just let it rip, because that thing is going to take it whatever you do. But into the wind, just use less loft. Don't hit the ball harder, because the harder you hit it, the increase in spin rate. And when you're going back, because the ball always backspins, that's how it gets elevation. So if you have wind coming into you, it's going to increase that spin rate, and it's going to push your ball back. And in fact, in some very windy conditions where there's 3 or 4 club wind and you're hitting a hard 7 instead of a very soft 5 iron, what you're doing there is you're hitting it harder, creating more spin, 7,000 revs or 8,000 revs. That wind is going to actually start moving the ball back. So what you can do is just take a 5 iron and hit it normal. You might end up short, you might end up not where you want to be exactly, but it's going to be better than a high effort, hard swing into the wind. Now let's say you don't have many shots. Let's say you just hit your normal shape. You have to just take into account where the wind's going to take the ball. So if you're hitting a draw with a draw wind, what are we going to do, players? What are we going to do? We can't just suddenly create shots out of thin air. So you just put your draw out there and let the wind ride it. You pick your arsenal of shots and you let it happen. If you have a low shot that's going to be less affected by the wind and you can take the distance hit on that, do it. Just get the ball in play. Get the ball to somewhere where you can get up and down. The big tricky part with wind is when we try to get fancy instead of just hitting what we can and accepting the result. Because for every hole you're going to have into the wind, you're going to have some downwind. For everyone left to right, you're going to have a hole right to left. It will even out. So give yourself the best chance by not getting all like fancy dancy. unless you know the shot and have the shot. If you would like to learn these shots to play in the wind, go see the pro who teaches in the wind. He will teach you how to play in the wind because he lives there. He understands it. The thing we want to remember is use less loft, don't hit it harder. Downwind, take advantage of it without getting in a hazard. If you have the opposite shape to the wind direction, left or right, use that shape to hold it up to the wind. And if you don't, and the wind is going with your shot shape, aim it further out. And if you can't, because there's trees in the way, if you aim it further out, you're going to have to just get the ball somewhere close to where you can pitch onto the green easily. That's what you want to do with the wind. Not really something you can show. I mean, if you play in windy conditions, you'll know how complicated it is. But for the average person who doesn't get to experience much wind and then suddenly does, just make it simple.